Sunak is working on convincing a number of rebel Tories to back the bill. He even seduced them with a bit of smoked salmon a little earlier this morning over breakfast. Well, let's talk about this with former Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, good morning, and former Brexit Secretary, David Davis. How is this going to go at 7 o'clock, David?
BBC called me Brexit warhorse.
A compliment.
I think. I think we're going to win it. If my colleagues are sensible, we're going to win it. I mean,
they're not always, David.
They're not always. They're not always. And we've had disasters in the past. You referred earlier, I think, to the 1986 defeat, and people forget in that year, Margaret Thatcher thought she was going to lose her job in the Westland crisis, and we lost Rydale. And yet we came back with a majority over 100 in less than a year. So these crises can blow over, and frankly, if he carries this off, this will actually show Rishi showing some leadership, doing something really controversial, solving a massive problem that was handed to him by Boris.
And Bill, the Star Chamber, we've heard all about this Star Chamber. People like Sir Bill Cash, a veteran MP, lawyers have looked at it and they've concluded that the bill isn't workable in its present form. But there are many lawyers, may I say, suggest, who are a little more illustrious, who say the opposite.
Well, I tell you what, if you or I tried to hire the 4 lawyers who gave the commentary on this yesterday saying it would work, I think we'd go bankrupt instantly. They're so expensive. Really, really top-class lawyers. And look, nothing is... what we've got to understand is nothing is risk-free in the law. We know that. Anybody who says to you, this court case is going to go this way, is off his rocker, right? But these people have said this is the best, this is the optimum, the best place you can be. So bear in mind, I mean, I've been involved in these battles in the past. I'm probably your only guest who's beaten the government in the European Court and beaten the European Court in the British Parliament. I've seen the battles.
It's over prisoners' votes.
Prisoner votes, which is exactly the same issue, stopping the European Court overreaching its powers. What Ben was talking about earlier. We can do that. We can stop it. And by the way, I did that in conjunction with Jack Straw, who wrote the Human Rights Act.
Former Labour Home Secretary.
Former Labour Home Secretary, very eminent guy, but he wrote the Human Rights Act, and he wrote the Human Rights Act to allow us to ignore the thing. That's the point. You've got to... people look at this with such simplistic views.
Do the rebels think that they're helping the party? And if so, why are they thinking this is helping a party that is clearly fractured and is clearly up against it now when it comes to the next election?
Well, I mean, I've heard, in all these sort of interviews everywhere, how is this is threatening Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. No, it's not. It's threatening their colleagues. In winning their seats. Every time we go through this sort of rota, you knock 10, 20, 30 seats off how many we're going to win next time. So it's not smart. And look at the substantive facts. I mean, just so your viewers can understand the detail of it, there are a couple of really big issues. Number one is the problem was the European Court, as you said earlier, anonymously, stopped the aircraft taking off from the tarmac by what's called a Rule 39 order. Right? We can now ignore those. Under this law, we can ignore those. Right? So that's the first thing. In other respects, this bill is full of what they call notwithstanding clauses. We can ignore this, we can ignore that. It's enough to give Bill Cash an exciting dream. There's so many notwithstanding clauses in there. So it works from that point of view. If you want to go further, however, and Ben was saying this, and this is what the ERG want to do, and go further, take away all rights of appeal. All rights of appeal to the court, right? Just imagine, you've heard the sorts of things that might be women in their final stage of pregnancy. Just imagine I'm one of the deportees, right? And I've got deep vein thrombosis. I can't make an appeal to a court to stop them putting me in a plane which will kill me. Or I've got late-stage cancer which can only be treated in a limited number of Western places, not in Rwanda. I can't go to the court. Or instead of getting David Davis, they've misspelt it, and they've got the other one, the Welsh secretary. He can't get to the court, and of course the Home Office never makes mistakes.
Funny that, no.
So that's a fundamental, that's a British right, let alone a European right. That's a right that's been around for hundreds of years. So you can't take those away.
Let's bring Arlene Foster into the discussion, because look, you've been hearing these things when it's they're literally arm wrestling to try and get legislation.
I was never
through.
offered smoked salmon, though. I'm very disappointed.
Well, when you were First Minister, what did you do to get people over the line?
Oh, my goodness, engagement. And I think it is important to engage with colleagues, you know, because Rishi Sunak has had his colleagues in this morning. He has spoken to them. We understand that he has told them that he's not pulling the bill, but he will consider amendments if they're within the framework. And I think it's important to say, and in agreement with David, that this bill should go through its second stage and then allow the discussion to take place. And if there are disagreements about different parts of the bill, then let's have those disagreements and let's discuss them. I think it's wrong to push down the bill at the very first opportunity. Here is a man trying to solve an incredibly difficult crisis in not just his leadership within the country. And therefore, I think it is important that he's allowed to push it forward. David has said that it deals with a number of issues. It does deal with a number of issues, and it would be wholly wrong not to have any appeal. That would be wrong. It would be un-British, and I think the illegal migration minister has said that this morning, coming under a bit of attack for it, but he's right about that.
And do you think there is public support for it still?
For the bill?
For the Rwanda bill?
I think there is. I think people are confused about what it means. As always happens with Westminster, things happen in a bit of a bubble, and that's why it's important for David and people like that to come on and actually explain what the bill is trying to do. And I think GB News does that very well, actually, instead of just getting into the politics of it. What are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
We're trying to deal with an immigration problem which is affecting our public services, but we have to do it in a way that is British, and I think that's really important.
David, do you think this bill will have a deterrent effect, ultimately? Because that's what you want it to do. Is it really going to do that, do you think?
Can't be 100% sure, frankly. You know, it depends how many we get. I mean, if we get 500 on the first flight, that'll start sending, not first flight, but the first round of flights, that'll start sending titles. What's interesting, which had not been the case before, is a number of European countries are looking to copy. And so if you suddenly find 4 or 5 countries saying, you know, we're all going to do the same thing, you might start to stop this at source. You know, and you keep hearing Keir Starmer going about, oh, stop this at source with all sorts of implausible ideas. But actually, this might stop it at source if enough countries say, actually, you know, we're not going to put up with this anymore. It's a third country option we're going to. So
what about the cost of it? I mean, the cost of it is eye-watering and more.
Well, if it works, it'll be cheap. No, if it works, it'll be cheap. You know, if it doesn't work, of course it's expensive. But if it works, it'll turn out to be cheap. 'Cause the cost of managing this whole process is measured in billions. You know, loads of billions.
I just want to go back to a point that David raised about, you know, lawyers differ, and lawyers do differ. Let's be honest about that. People can look at a piece of legislation and take a different view as to what it means. But politics is about the art of the possible, we're always told. So politics isn't about 100% guarantees, and that's why you've people like William Hague, Ben Wallace, David Davis all saying, let's give this a chance, let's move forward, because at the moment what we're doing is myopically turning in on ourselves and destroying the party. So let's try and sort this out. Let's look at the art of the possible, whereas others are looking for absolute guarantees. And unfortunately, in politics, you never get a guarantee.
And the smart thing about this is it pretty much goes as far as you can.
Yeah.
If you go further, you basically have to abandon the ECHR.
Well, Rwanda says they'll pull out as well.
Well, Rwanda says they'll pull out. But let's imagine somehow you gave them another 100 million, you bribe them back in. I don't think you could, but let's imagine. But even without that, if we go any further and we abandon ECHR, the Good Friday Agreement unravels. If the Good Friday Agreement unravels, the TCA, the free trade agreement with the European Union, unravels. You know, so all of a sudden,
there are unintended consequences. Although, David, there are problems with this bill that have to be sorted out in relation to Northern Ireland as well, because as it stands under the Windsor framework, there are difficulties with this bill, which is why I think it needs to go through a process to sort those things out. But it can't be ignored what's happening in Northern Ireland.
No, I agree with you. But my point is, they've gone pretty much as far as they can in terms of being hard on this, because you know, another few inches. That was what Rishi meant when he said another few inches and it breaks. Yeah, because it unravels all sorts of other things.
Even if they get this through the Commons, Arlene, in whatever form, it then goes to your place, the House of Lords,
your place,
stuffed full of people who will know instinctively
I think they have smoked salmon all the time.
Yeah, all the time.